Silent divorce may seem appealing, but it can lead to a ticking time bomb. If a relationship breaks down, lawyers say don't delay the legal process. Christopher Yu is a partner of Shulman Partners LLP, and I asked him more about this silent divorce and what are the problems with it.
So silent divorce, Patty, is when couples agree that their relationship has ended, whether that's a marriage or a cohabitation or whatever it might be, usually marriage, but they don't actually finalize, what the terms are arising out of their divorce. So it could be a couple that's been together for 30 years that's decided, we're no longer really a couple here. We're not really acting as a couple, but we don't really want to take steps to formally divorce. That's what that term silent divorce is referring to.
So they may just separate. They may go live in different places. They just never go through the legal aspects of divorce.
It could be either. Sometimes you see people living under the same roof still. Right? They'll still, they have a nice house that they've lived in and they've built up throughout the years, and they just decide, we both like living here. It'd be expensive to move. Why don't we just keep living here? But for all intents and purposes, we're acting as if we are not together as a married couple. So they'll live separate lives. They might even see other people at that point.
So what would be the main reasons for not doing anything legal about it, just kind of being roommates?
Yeah, there's a number of potential reasons. Some people they're uncomfortable with the idea of telling family and friends that they've separated. Some people, for religious reasons, just don't want to get an actual divorce. For some people, it's if you've been living life this way for a really long time together, it's a disruption to your finances. It's a disruption to life as you know it. So it can be a daunting task for some people, which is why I suspect people will do something like a silent divorce at times. But there's any number of reasons. It really just depends what the facts are for that individual couple there.
I'm interested in this because when I first heard about it, because I found myself in that myself a long time ago when my marriage ended, and mostly it was because I just didn't want to announce it to the world for a long time. So yeah, it was kind of kept quiet. But what is it? What's the problem with this by not getting some kind of legal papers in order?
So the problem, the way I describe it, Patty, is it's not really a problem until it becomes a problem. And what do I mean by that? It's kind of like you have a fire, okay? The fire's burning, it's close to a house. If you pour fuel on that fire, does it mean your house is going to burn down right beside it? No, not necessarily. But you're adding and you're increasing the risk of something blowing up. So when you are married to somebody, you have rights and obligations afforded to you under the law. When you don't end that marriage by way of a divorce, or if you don't just leave it alone pretending nothing happens and you introduce another element, like let's say you start seeing someone else, you're making things really messy for your estate down the road. Should you pass away, there's a lot of litigation, mostly in the estates field, where people have done something like that and they've repartnered, and that repartner either brings a dependent support claim under the Succession Law Reform Act. There's also a really recent case a couple years back in the Supreme Court where there was a life insurance policy that one spouse was paying for, that the new partner was designated as the beneficiary, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court. So you're introducing a lot of unknown and a lot of elements that could lead to messy estate or family litigation down the road by not just doing the adult thing and terminating the first marriage and starting whatever you want to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah, I could see how that would get messy if you kept it going too long and you did start a new relationship and you can't really move forward because you're still living in the past.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
What does it mean though when it comes to, so say this has gone on for a couple of years, right? And you haven't had a divorce and something happens. Does the married other partner, do they have a claim still on you, or you have a claim on them still? As we both move along in your lives.
Yeah. So rights and obligations are they're very fact specific, right? So it's going to be dependent on what actually happened in a case. I would backtrack even further. It's not even necessarily that there may be that there's a right or obligation that arises, but even the fact that you're introducing, for instance, a new spouse into the picture, the fact that they might pursue something is reason enough for you to want to terminate the first relationship, right? Like even if the new spouse ends up not having a rightful claim to part of the estate, you still spend years fighting over these things. So it makes sense to just end something first. But in terms of your question, Patty, yeah, rights and obligations can arise under the various legislation in Ontario as long as you're a dependent. So a dependent can be more than one person. It could be your children. It could be your new spouse. It could be your non-divorced first wife from the marriage. It could, any number of different scenarios could arise, and you are introducing uncertainty in a situation that doesn't need it. If you just terminated and spelled out what your obligations were in the first place.
Wow, very interesting. And I guess too, you got to worry about, you may still be responsible for any debt that your former spouse, well, I guess still spouse, current spouse may rack up, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, depending on the facts, absolutely. That's on the table too.
Wow. So in the grand scheme of things, what would your advice be to somebody whose marriage is coming to an end, whether they decide to stay in the same house for a while or not, and maybe everything's amicable right now, there's no big fights or anything else, but what would your advice be?
So on the specific issue of silent divorce, particularly if things are amicable at the time, my advice would be, keep things amicable, but wrap things up. Get a separation agreement done. Especially use that equity that you have when you guys are in good terms to say, okay, we agree that, I'm going to keep these things, you're going to keep these things. Is anybody going to pay anybody support? If so, for how long? Just wrap that up. It doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be in court. People often resolve things outside of court. So just make sure you have some type of finality or certainty as to what your obligations are. As a lawyer, my personality really hates that kind of uncertainty here. So I would just want to know, what am I on the hook for? So my advice would be find out what that is, get that done, get that drawn up so that you're not introducing a potential for disaster down the road.
Great advice. I really appreciate it, Christopher.
Thank you so much for having me on, Patty.
Okay. That's Christopher Yu, a partner with Shulman Partners LLP, talking about silent divorce.